the Star League to defend us the frontier against Sir. Sir, enemy squadron in sector 50.
Hello and welcome to the Last Movie Outpost, where you can get all of your movie news, reviews and everything cool about film. Now, if you'd have told a 9-year-old me that one day I'd have been talking to the cast members of one of my all-time favourite films, I would have laughed heartily in your face. But today I am so pleased to be joined by the wonderful Catherine Mary Stewart, who was in The Last Starfighter. Hello, Catherine.
Hi there, how are you?
I am doing very well. Thank you so much for joining us. We really do appreciate it.
It is my pleasure. Talking to somebody
Excellent.
across the pond. I love it.
Yes, I do like to think I speak the King's English.
Yeah, good. I hope so.
I know you.
It's
I was
all
going to
I
say I know
accept.
you. I know you moved to London for one point, so I can do you the London accent if you want, there, darling. All right.
What? I think I understand each language of the English.
So, Catherine has starred in many movies such as Weekend at Bernie's, The Girl Next Door, The Apple, Mischief, Night of the Comet, and the amazing Last Starfighter. Now, we're going to talk hopefully about some of our other movies, but it's The Last Starfighter that we want to talk about, an absolute classic from 1984. Now, for people who may not have seen the movie, how would you describe it?
Oh, I think it is a sci-fi adventure um, that the regular human being can relate to on some level. It's sort of a ordinary boy finding himself in extraordinary situations.
It is. It's just like I was 9 when it came out, and
Oh,
I played it to death on VHS because it was just one of those movies, like you say, that it's so relatable. You know, I can play a
right.
computer game and end up saving the universe.
I know it's relatable, it's inspirational. I mean, it's sort of set at a time in terms of the boy's age where he's going through this incredible transition and he's confused and he's angry and he just wants to get out of this small trailer park that he feels like he's stuck in and he doesn't see any opportunity. And then when the opportunity arises, he hesitates. And the lesson is, take advantage of the opportunities when they present themselves. Ultimately, that's kind of the lesson, and I think it's very inspiring that way.
There's the great line by Robert Preston when Alex says, "I'm just a kid from a trailer park," and he says, "If that's what you think, then that's all you'll ever be."
Listen, Centauri, I'm not any of those guys. I'm a kid from a trailer park.
If that's what you think, then that's all you'll ever be.
And again,
That's right.
it's inspirational because if you do think of yourself like that, you're never going to push yourself forward for anything, are you?
That's right. You have to have an attitude that the sky's the limit, so to speak. I mean, that's in this case, it's like literal, um, but it is. I mean, people that excel aren't any different from everybody else. They're just open to the opportunities. You really do have to grab on with both hands and hold on tight.
So initially, how did you get the part of Maggie?
Um, it was a traditional kind of audition process. I was on a soap opera here called Days of Our Lives, and but I was still going out on auditions for other things, and this was just one of these things. And you hear a lot about, well, I mean, Andrew McCarthy did this documentary about the Brat Pack, which was very
Yeah.
dominant in the 80s. And it was just another one of these auditions where a lot of those people were there as well. uh, and I showed up and Lance Guest showed up and we ended up reading together. um, and so we were so lucky with this opportunity because I think that they intentionally didn't want anybody super famous because we'd done some work, here and there, but we weren't one of these people that were idolized almost.
It
So
could be distracting for the actual movie, can it?
I think so. I mean, I don't know exactly what their attitude was, but I mean that could have been something. Um, So yeah, I mean, we were really lucky, and we got along really well. We had to do. I remember this is probably the callback where we were paired up, and we were supposed to. They just wanted us to sort of improvise kind of a scene at a lake with a couple of a boyfriend and girlfriend at night. And of course, in the movie, there's that scene at the lake.
Yeah.
But what we did was just improvise. We weren't trying to be funny. We were just trying to be young and innocent and boyfriend girlfriend thing. And we, literally in this little room, we lay down on the floor and we're just talking about the stars and the sky. And, you know, um, I remember that, and the director and the producers were in the room. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think they sort of maybe went for kind of the innocence of us as people, and that suited them for the characters.
I think that's one of the appeals of Maggie is she was that girl next door. She wasn't kind of like a Princess Leia character who lived in Alderaan in Florida. She was that lovely girl next door who was
Right.
very loyal to Alex and just you couldn't help but fall in love with her.
Well, thank you. I mean, yeah, that's the difference between, it's often compared to Star Wars and whatnot, but like Star Wars was set in the future. I feel like I mean,
Just to
it was
just
a
to just to just to interrupt there, it was actually set in a galaxy a long time ago. I apologise.
excuse me. This is true. I guess it's whatever.
Sorry.
Oops. Technically, I'm incorrect. But it to me, what makes the Last Starfighter a little bit more accessible is the fact that it sort of takes place today, and you can relate
Yeah,
to the characters on that level.
yeah.
So I mean, I was the traditional girl next door for sure. That didn't really have the ambition that Alex had, but so that sort of creates a little issue. But I mean, I thought it was sort of a lovely relationship, and then also the relationship with the beta unit was really fun to play. And I think Lance did such a great job just having those little subtle kind of differences. This robot basically who
Who's
really is
learning from the ground level
learning
completely.
as he goes from like you know speaking to his girlfriend to trying to make out with her this stuff. I thought it was brilliant. I thought.
I mean, well, that was one of the questions I was going to ask, but was there much of a difference between Alex and the beta unit?
Well, I mean, you see it in the show, don't you? I mean, it was. I think for my character, it was sort of like, well, he looks exactly the same in every way. He's just acting weird,
Yeah.
but just kind of subtly weird, not in a terrible way. But I think we knew each other so well, and I'm sure we'd gone through different stages in our lives where we were slightly
Off.
responding differently. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I just, there was no reason for me to think there was anything out of the ordinary, except that he was acting weird. But I mean, maybe she kind of dug it in a way. Ooh, a new Alex.
He seemed to enjoy the dirty talk up to a point.
Yeah, well, up to a point when it became a little offensive, I feel like.
Yes. Yeah. Again, it was just such a great scene because, I mean, again, there's something about the movie is obviously there's action adventure, but there's wonderful comedy as well, which was just sort of injected in there.
Yeah, for sure.
When when you were obviously you were sort of based on Earth, did you ever get a chance to go and visit Lance and the crew whilst they were filming in space or in space, I should say?
Yes, space. Well, we were doing some pickup shots after the main shoot was finished, and so those shots were done in a studio, and I got to see poor Lance in the what is it, Rose Blossom? Is that what it was called, or what was the thing that spun around and shot
Oh,
everybody?
oh yes, that yeah, Death Blossom.
Y- Death Blossom, Death Blossom,
That's right.
which was literally just a cage that he was put in, and everything was sort of filled in with CGI afterwards. But he did have to spin around,
Oh my goodness.
and he didn't like that very much. That was
I can
kind of, yeah.
imagine.
Yeah, that was tough on his stomach, I feel like. And then we did the scene where us going up into the spaceship at the
Spaceship.
very end of the
Yeah.
movie, sort of going up the elevator, and sort of a close up of us kind of talking to each other. Um, we shot that, but yeah, that was all I actually got to witness. But I did. The greatest part about that was that Robert Preston was finishing up his shots that he was
Yeah.
doing, the extra shots that he was doing, and he was leaving as I arrived. I never met him on the set. We never overlapped in the shoot itself.
Oh,
So which was such a drag because
it's
it's
Robert
Robert
Preston.
Preston.
I mean, funny enough, I was going to talk to him about him. I absolutely adore the Music Man. It's a fabulous,
Mm.
fabulous film. What was Robert like?
Uh, he was exactly what you would hope he would be like. You know, he's just like the characters that he plays. He just had this glow around him. I felt like he sort of glowed in gold. And then
Oh,
I know he was just lovely. And um, Nick Castle, the director, introduced us, and he took my hand. I don't think he really knew who I was or the context of the acting or anything like
yeah.
that in the story. But he took my hand and he kissed it, and I was just like, "Oh my
Oh,
God!" He was probably in his 60s, and I'm in my 20s, and I'm like, "I love you."
again, he seemed like such a wonderful person. It's so nice to hear that he was actually like that.
I guess he really was. Yeah.
Oh. Obviously, there's a big cast in the movie, but I mean, you and Lance got along very well as well, as you said from the audition.
Yes, no, we did. And we're still really good friends to this day. I mean, whenever I go out, I live in New York and he lives in Los Angeles. And whenever I go out there, I mean, at this point, he had somebody staying in his apartment in his house. He bought this house years and years and years ago. And he had a little sort of apartment down below, and there was somebody in there, but now there isn't. So every time I go to LA, I get to stay with
To
them.
stay there. Oh,
Which is fantastic. But yeah, Lance and I got along really well. He is an actor with an immense amount of integrity, and he has some great stories about working with Robert Preston. How
yeah.
this
Obviously, they
was
spent a
like
lot more time, yeah,
they
together.
spent a lot of time together, and he just really he was young and he wanted to do the best work he possibly could, so he was like, and he would call Robert to rehearse and rehearse and rehearse, and he said Robert was always like, yes, whatever, my boy, or something, and was really very, very gracious with his time and energy and everything. So he has some good stories.
Again, as another character, obviously you didn't work with much was Grieg. But I mean, did you met Dan? Is it O'Harley?
Oh, Hurley. Yeah.
Oh, Hurley. I
Oh,
apologize.
Hurley. Come on, he's from the UK, for God's sakes. You should know all this. But here's
I'm
the other.
terrible when it comes to name.
That's
Like say,
okay.
the other day I only learned. Have you heard of the name Siobhan?
Yes. Yeah.
But it's spelt Sabayahan.
I know.
And
Yeah,
I
I
was
know.
looking at this name and going, Sabayahan? And my wife said, no, it's Siobhan. Oh, right, okay.
Yes.
But yes,
It's
anyway,
like
Dan, what was,
Sorcy. It's like Sorcy, right?
yeah,
The actress Sorcy. Um, Same thing. It's all these letters jumbled up, and somehow it comes out as Sorcy.
I recognize
Uh,
all those letters, but not in that order.
exactly. Exactly.
But sorry, coming
But
back to Dan, yeah, because
Dan
again,
Hurley.
did you meet him in and out of makeup?
No, that's the thing. I never saw him outside of all that makeup that he had on.
Wow.
I had no idea who he was. I mean, well, here's what happened is we were doing a screening in Los Angeles for the 25th anniversary of The Last Starfighter. And I thought, I should really figure out who this Dan O'Hurley is guy, who Grig is. And I looked him up, and I mean, he was he was iconic as an actor. I mean, he was in films from like the early 50s through contemporary movies, and
Yeah.
what a good looking man he was. That was the other thing that was shocking to me. It was like
What, in the
he'd go
brown
for
with a bald head and
yeah, yeah, I
you
love
like
that. But really a really good looking man outside of all the prosthetic makeup. And so, yeah, it's so funny. Leading up to the 25th anniversary, I had to do some research because, well, it had been 25 years. And I actually, at the screening, they also did a Q&A with all the technical people. There was stuff I had no idea about. I mean, the Last Starfighter technically was groundbreaking. I mean, not even sort of breaking.
Yeah.
It was almost like the birth of CGI.
I mean, I know that CGI had taken place before that, but I always refer to it as the first film to use CGI completely for the special effects of the spaceships and everything. It
That's
was
right. That's
groundbreaking.
right. Right. It really was groundbreaking, and I had no idea. I didn't know anything about all this stuff. But it was fascinating because they weren't sure up until almost the last minute if they were going to use practical special effects, the traditional kind of models with the thing, or if they were going to attempt this new CGI thing. And I guess while we were shooting, the technicians were sitting in some room with giant computers, you know how they used to be giant,
Yeah,
um, and really just creating programs for what we all know. I mean, we take it for granted now, but they really created them from the ground up. And they did say that they wish they'd had more time, but they were really on a tight time schedule to prove themselves before the movie would be released or whatever, or go into final edit or whatever it was. But I didn't know any of this. I didn't know what the heck was going on behind the scenes. So it's sort of interesting, and truly, it is. It really was foundational for CGI today.
so I mean, if that was the case, then what was your first reaction when you went to the first screenings and everything?
Well, I honestly didn't know what I was looking at, in terms of special effects. I didn't know, it just looked, I knew nothing. I knew nothing about all that stuff. So I liked the movie. I remember thinking, this is such a sweet movie. And as an actor watching yourself on screen, sometimes it can be really hard. You're like,
Yeah,
oh, it can be cringeworthy.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
but in this case, I kind of was able to step outside myself and watch it and just really enjoy it. So, but with in terms of the special effects, I knew nothing. I remember, when the spacecraft lands in the trailer park, um, I think they had sort of legs coming up, like,
Right.
as props, and the direction was basically just look above the legs in astonishment or something like that. And then they had it was we shot out in the desert, basically in California. California is actually a desert, but an irrigated desert. But we were out in a place called Antelope Valley, and it was very, very dry and dusty. And they had one of those giant fans, just
So,
blasting us with dirt. So that was fun.
yeah.
But I didn't have a clue. They didn't even know what this spacecraft was really going to look like at that
I
point.
suppose, like I say, it's very different because I mean, you had people like Ray Harryhausen who actors had to have to obviously act to nothing, but
Mm,
this was as we said groundbreaking. It was one of those
mm,
first movies where nobody really knew what it was going to look like until the final
mhm,
thing was finished. So, did
mhm.
you think it was going to be such a cultural hit that people like me now, 40 years later, are still talking about it?
Absolutely, I knew it. No. Um, no, I mean, and it came out at a time with Gremlins and all these huge blockbuster sort of movies of the day.
Yeah.
The 80s was, there was a lot of stuff in the 80s, and it
We
kind
have
of,
always said we've always said at the last movie outpost that the 80s is probably the best decade for cinema. There are just so
it
many
was good.
movies that you can just reel off that are just absolutely they'll stand the test of time no matter how long they go for.
Yeah, and it was such a time of playfulness and innocence. there's so many different stages in the history of movies, obviously, but like the 60s, they were really trying to be very artsy and dark
Yeah,
and gritty. And then the 70s were more, Jaws and that kind of adventure thing. And then the 80s were so much about sci-fi and adventure and this kind of, and there was so much, like I said, playfulness and innocence. And I feel like every time I think of the 80s, I feel like I envision bright colors, just so
yeah.
much color and joy and loudness. I loved that era because I loved the big hair. I loved the giant shoulders. I loved the big cinched in waists because I have a dancer's body. I was a dancer. That's how I started. And, it was like it gave me a sense that I actually had some shape to my body, even if it was all padded.
Hmm. I've got a shape. I think it's pear shaped. Um,
No,
so,
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean,
Go ahead.
like I say, obviously, like I say, it's 40 years later now, and people.
Mm,
So it's one of those movies I watched again recently, and I just had
mm.
a smile on my face at what how wonderful it was. There must have been talks about a sequel or a reboot at some point in time. I mean, what ever happened with that?
Yeah, well, I mean, that was sort of put on hold. Obviously, they left it wide open for a sequel. Um, it just didn't do that great at the box office. It really found its life, I think, in the video store, VHS. Like a lot of my movies from the 80s, they really found this second life, which I'm obviously very grateful for. But over the last 10 or 15 years, yes, there's definitely been talk about a sequel. Um, eh, One of the issues was Universal owned the rights to the script. So
Right.
it was that made it much more complicated to just create a sequel. But Jonathan Betchell, the original writer, he has the rights back. And
Oh,
he has also written a sequel script, which is kind of great because I feel like the original writer would stick with the integrity of the original movie. And that
it's
to
unfortunately we don't see in Hollywood these days. I mean,
no,
so often somebody else
exactly.
takes the property and they kind of try to put their own twist on it. But if you've got the original writer, that's interesting. So there is a script out there for it
Mm,
somewhere. Have
yes.
you read
And
it?
he no, no.
All right.
No, I think it's kind of all secret and stuff. We've been given sort of a hint of what it might possibly be, but yeah, I can't really talk about it. And I guess
No, that's
he's been
fair enough.
trying to sell it around town. I don't know what the status is of it right now. At one point, it was kind of heating up a little bit, but I don't know. I mean, for me, it'd be just so much fun to be a part of a sequel. Obviously,
Okay.
we may be the grandparents of the next Last Starfighter, but I don't care. I think it would be really, really cool to do.
And with obviously, like I say, the cultural significance of this, you do quite a lot of the Comic Cons and you meet your fans. Do you
Mm.
appreciate that? Obviously, if you're
Ah,
talking to somebody like me, then yes, you do.
yeah, no, I do. I mean, this whole Comic-Con thing has been sort of shocking to me so again at this 25th anniversary, this guy came up to me afterwards and said, I represent people for Comic-Cons or conventions. And there had been like a couple they weren't taken very seriously. They were Star Trek conventions and things that were sort of joked
Yeah.
about at that time, and I was like, I don't know if I want to do that. And so I kind of he wanted to represent me, and I kind of hesitated, but when I finally agreed to see what it was like, I did it, and I was just blown away. I couldn't believe that there was this audience out there that loved the movie so much, and literally again, I learned so much from them about not only the movie, but about my
Yeah.
character, about, a lot of them knew all the lines. I mean, big fans like yourself. I mean, that saw this movie, it sort of fell into that cuff of the kind of movie a parent might let their kids see because it's not an adult movie, and it's
offensive.
not
Yeah,
it's not like a Disney movie either,
yeah.
particularly. It's kind of like one of those transitional things. And so I always, it's a theory of mine, but I feel like it hit a sweet spot for an audience, you know? It's also maybe like a first movie that you got to see by yourself, and you never forget that,
Mm,
you know?
mm.
And you hold it close. And there's a real sentiment involved with that sort of really loving a movie at that age.
Oh
Um,
yeah, I was
mm,
very lucky because my dad. I keep banging on about this, and I know the guys are going to moan, but I grew up in an 8mm cinema that my dad had converted in our garage because my dad was a projectionist growing up, and
no
so the first
way.
time I saw it was on 8mm
You're
in a little proper
kidding
cinema with
me.
little chairs. If I was lucky, Mum would come round with a little penny and ice cream, and
Oh, I
so
love
again,
that.
things like Star Wars and Last Starfighter and
Mm,
Biggles is another one of my sort of favourites. Again, they just to me it just takes me back. My dad passed away like 20 odd years ago now,
okay,
and it
yeah.
just takes me back to being in that cinema with my dad,
Mm.
watching this wonderful movie. And as soon as we finished it, we would put it back on again because I wanted to watch it again. And because it's not just a good movie, it's the beautiful story. And as you said at the beginning, there's this wonderful theme that runs through it that you can reach out and you can touch the stars. It's wonderful.
Mhm. Yeah, you just have to be open to it. And again, he wasn't. He was like, no, this is crazy. This is way too crazy. And when he finally realized that there were so many moments in the movie where he was like, "What am I doing here? Why am I going there?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? We're going to
Yeah.
die." But he kept
Yeah.
persevering through it all and reaped the benefits of it. And then when he comes back, he's just like, "Yeah, well, I'm going back up there, so either you come or you don't," like kind of a thing. He really it had resolved to finish out this, his
Adventure.
duty adventure. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, so it's such a great message for young people in general, you know?
Catherine, we really can't thank you enough for joining us here at the Last Movie Outpost. I've got a video planned and we've got a couple of articles planned about the Last Starfighter. But in the
Nice.
meantime, thank you so much for joining us.
It was my pleasure. It was a lot of fun.